Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the second episode of the Social Talent Show, where we'll be covering leveraging social networks within the enterprise and your employees' social graphs. My name is Crystal Ness, and I'm the producer of the show, as well as the head of marketing for UPMO, and I'll be your moderator today. If it's your first time viewing or listening to the Social Talent Show, let me give you a brief introduction. The Social Talent Show is a thought leadership series developed by UPMO and Talent Culture designed to showcase radical thinkers on topics of talent collaboration, talent mobility, HR, and social talent. We'll be hosting the Social Talent Show every second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, showcasing a new thought leader each time. During our first episode, if you were able to join us, we had Yvette Cameron from Constellation Research, and it proved to be an exciting conversation about social HR becoming the future of talent management, acquisition, and retention. Today is our second episode, and we'll introduce today's guest in a second. But before we start, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us, and we're truly excited about the attendance and the positive reactions of the show. So as part of our regular show, I'd like to introduce you to our hosts. First off, we have Rob Garcia, VP of Product at UPMO. Rob is a disruptor and innovator from Silicon Valley who's been building e-commerce, financial, and consumer-oriented web and social products for over 12 years. He's also the leading voice in the startup community, blogging, tweeting, mentoring, and speaking passionately about innovation, and more recently about social collaboration, career, and talent management. Rob, say hello.
Hello. So it's exciting to be here. We're going to jump right in a few minutes into the content, but I'm happy to be here, and it's episode 2. We're excited. Let's get going.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we also have Megan M. Bureau, the founder of Talent Culture and T-Chat, the popular Twitter conversation about talent culture, future of work, and the intersection of social media, recruiting, and HR. Megan is a member of the National Association of Personnel Services, the Society of Human Resources Management, and several entrepreneurial organizations. Her thoughts are often quoted on top publications such as Forbes, CBS Money Watch, Glassdoor, Monster, and HR Pub of Your Choice. Megan, say hello.
Hi, everybody. It's Megan M. Bureau here, and I currently have a cold, so I'm even a little more nasally than usual, and nothing could stop me from being here today. So tweet, I'm excited to be here. I see that Twitter stream, T-Chat hashtag moving a little bit, and we are, just excited to talk about, the social graph and leaders getting more social and employee engagement and all of the topics that make communities and workplaces tick. So excited. Thank you again for having me.
Great. Thanks, Megan. So a few more housekeeping items before we get started. First of all participants will be muted throughout the duration of the show. However, we will be taking questions via the question and chat feature or via live Twitter stream. So feel free to use the hashtag TChat liberally this morning. We will be checking it and pulling questions from there. The webinar will be recorded, and its slides, video, and podcast will be available to you at the socialtalentshow.com tomorrow afternoon. The show today will be about 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions for about 10 or 15 minutes, and we want you to definitely be active asking any of those questions during the Q&A segment. So without further ado, here are your hosts, Rob and Megan.
Morning, everyone. Well, thanks, Crystal, and it's so exciting to be here. It's particularly exciting to see the response from people joining in and checking out the videos from a previous one as well. Keep tweeting, guys. You see T-Chat. Today's a mad day for T-Chat, and Megan can attest to that.
What else is new?
This is the first one. And I think you have another one to talk about HR tech at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and another one at 4 p.m., which is the Twitter chat. So craziness. I don't know how you do it, Megan, but you do it. This is good.
We are living it. That's what we say. We call that in social media for leaders. We live it. We tweet, right? It's all about behavior.
Exactly. So use that T-Chat hashtag, and we'll keep an eye on those questions as well. Especially if you disagree, don't just say, hey, we agree with what you guys are talking about. We'd love to see you guys saying no, and this is why not, and that creates a really interesting conversation. So we'll keep an eye on that. Thanks again for joining the first one, and the video is up and available for the first one with Yvette Cameron, and that was a really long one, and very good one as well. It's a whole hour, so we have to actually break it into 2 videos of 20-something minutes each. but the amount of content and stuff that's in there that is about social HR and the future of work and the future of HR is amazing, and you shouldn't miss it. So go check it out either on Talent Culture's website, Utmost blog, or directly on the socialtalentshow.com website. So for today, we're super excited to cover the topic of employees' social network and how companies can leverage them to get work done, to attract and retain new talent and existing talent, to understand who's influential, who's important, who's at risk, who's working with whom, in essence, to get business done and get business moving. So that's an interesting topic, and we have today Bennett Resnik, and we're going to introduce him really quickly, and then we'll get him started. So Bennett is, I met Bennett actually through Twitter, which is.
Oh, go figure.
Yeah, exactly. So Bennett has an amazing background in looking at how companies actually use and analyze the social media and the social graph, and how they can actually use it and leverage it to their advantage. So you can see his bio here on the screen right now. But he's been working with a lot of startups and small businesses and nonprofits to develop a comprehensive strategy to build and cultivate what he calls social capital. And he'll talk about what that is. And so follow him on Bennett Resnik, at Bennett Resnik on Twitter, and let's get going. Bennett, welcome.
Hi, how are you? It's definitely great
Hi,
to,
Bennett. Thanks for being here.
No, it's
We
a pleasure.
think you #rock. How's that
Yeah,
sound?
it's definitely newer for me to be doing webinars. I mainly do a lot of conversations in front of company executives and students in colleges of business. So webinar is definitely something new for me. But just to jump right in, social capital is what I've been discussing with a lot of pre-professionals and professionals, and it's this sociological concept that refers to connections within social networks. And so that's what a lot of companies and a lot of individuals are trying to leverage today. So there are two sides to this social network analysis. There's the social side, which has sort of morphed into this social media network analysis. And then the other side is really organizational network analysis, analyzing internal networks from a company perspective, and really taking employee retention to another level by mapping out these relationships. And so there's definitely great benefit with that.
Let me jump right in there. So let me make sure we understand, we follow what you're saying. So there's two sides of of what you call social media analysis. There's an external social media analysis, which is understanding people's relationships, influence, impact outside of the organization or
Right.
publicly. And there's the internal organizational analysis of the social networks that employees have within the company. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so tell me why companies want to do this. Why do they want to do both of those?
There are many benefits to doing both. It's really an innovative process that you're mapping out how employees are exchanging content, sharing knowledge, really following the paper trail within a company, as well as the relationships within the company. If you're looking at an email server, who's emailing whom, which divisions are talking the most, finding out influencers and key hubs of conversation and workflow networks. And then the other side is the social media side, which you're really identifying the exchange of conversation and the exchange, the online exchanges between people, who are customers, who are employees. There's really a wide range.
Very
So
cool.
are we basically at a place where we're deciding collectively that social media is no longer a fad? Anybody? I mean, it seems like now we're getting scientific, Bennett, which I love. This is really interesting info. So we're not only saying social media is no longer a fad, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn are part of our daily life, right? But we're expecting more engagement from CEOs and leaders, and we're mapping it out. We're actually showing intelligent market research that says, here's how a platform like Twitter can give you access to your customers or your business's bottom line.
Right, and we've been mapping out organizational networks for decades, but now we're doing it by leveraging data that's provided through these public mediums.
That's wonderful. That is
So very
good
cool.
stuff.
So it's taking this to another level. So we're capturing the conversational pattern of social media, which says what people are saying about the company, a product, competitors. You can really cast a large net over the web and capture these keywords of conversation.
So I have a question. So at Upmo, we've been talking about social talent. You know, the fact that your talent is now social. If you want to retain it, you want to keep it, you want to find it, you have to use social media channels. You have to network with them. You have to have social talent pools or communities ready to go at any point in time. You have to maintain those communities. And by maintaining doesn't mean just having a database. It means engaging with them. So tell me a little bit about what you consider social capital. What goes into that social capital? Because you're talking about capturing those conversations, capturing those patterns on social media. But how is that related to social talent, and how is that? What do you consider that social capital?
So social capital is the sociological concept that is referring to the connections of a social network. And it's interesting because the idea of a social network has really changed over the years from people to people to computer, all these different networks. Everything is a network. Everything can be mapped out. So the question really is how can companies take employee retention strategy to the next level? How are we analyzing employee interaction to create a stronger collaborative team and collaborative company? So with the social and organizational network analysis, companies can improve this collaboration and find these underutilized resources.
I can't help but wonder, Bennett, if you're seeing a difference between, say, baby boomers and looking at some of the generational nuances within the workplace. So baby boomer CEOs, yeah, I have to. Come on, everybody. I mean, there's a huge disparity, isn't there, between baby boomer CEOs and your, 27-year-old CEO?
Yes, certainly.
And
that's why I think.
Sorry, Bennett. Let me just jump right in. Just to tag along.
Sure.
Does social media and social networking and professional networking in the enterprise and outside, does that help bring all these generations together or separate them more?
Yeah.
The problem is if employees are not open to this. I mean, they have to be receptive to this idea and this practice in order for everything to.
Wait a minute. Can I interrupt for a moment? Did you guys just hear what Bennett, the employees being receptive? What about the hiring leaders and CEOs being receptive and getting more social? I love this.
For sure.
We're actually turning this conversation that I usually have exactly on its head. This is fantastic, right?
Yeah, it's definitely taking the pyramid and you're turning it upside down. We're looking at everybody being receptive to this new type of technological leverage and data leverage.
Yeah, I think Megan, you mentioned earlier leading by example and emulating the behavior. So I think it makes sense to have different almost seeded conversations and seeded people in every generation and in every position in the company to be engaged and turning it and passing that power, if you will, through social to the rest of the organization. That's really interesting. All right, let's move right along.
So
click on this thing.
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
Let's just keep in mind a theme that I love to ponder is the idea of building trust. Because when you talk about social media in the workplace and adoption and employee engagement, it really is about building trust, in this case through social media. And it can go a really long way in terms of employee engagement. But part of that trust is watching your leaders within your workplace engage in a way that's authentic and visible to not only the internal employees but the outside world as well. And I'm going to bring it up because I did last time and we had a lot of laughs. It's all about the nirvana, right? It's talent nirvana. When we get to a place where the leadership team and the office manager and everybody in between is on message and fired up and ignited, we have employee engagement, and then we're sharing that with the rest of the world via what? LinkedIn, Twitter, our company blog. Isn't it fantastic to work here today because, and it's not a story that's made up by an outside PR firm, it's a genuine story that your employees or your quote-unquote brand ambassadors tell.
Right. Yeah, it's a real one, absolutely. Bennett, can you walk us through some of those? You have some amazing graphs in here. Can you walk us through what they mean, what they do, how you actually use them to determine or to give recommendations to some of your customers about what they should be doing with social media and social within the enterprise?
Sure. So what we're looking at now is an example of a network of conversation and the exchange from individuals. And each individual person is a dot on that graph, or if the vertex has been augmented and manipulated, it's because the color and size have changed for two reasons. And that's because we're looking at cleanness and something else called the eigenvector centrality. And so that really accounts for how many vertex connections how many connections a vertex has and the degree that of the vertex it's connected to, as well as the importance and the sort of path between vertices. And so this is really the exchange of conversation from a social learning summit that was at American University a couple of weeks ago, and it's tracking their hashtag that they determined in the beginning of the panel discussion. And it's fascinating. I mean, you're really able to see who is a part of the conversation, who's joining in from outside the panel just because they're on Twitter and following that hashtag at the moment. And this is where
is it fair to say that the bigger the dot here, the more influential that person is, because the person is having the opportunity to influence the conversation within the company or even outside of the company?
Right. Exactly. So if this is being done for if this type of network conversation or relationships is being done for a company, the influencers and the key hubs are able to be located through the mapping of these relationships and the exchange of a conversation.
So what does a company do with this? So you do all this analysis for them. What do they get out of this? What's important about this? What's good about seeing this, visualizing this?
There's definitely a couple practical applications for this type of use. This year is the social media network analysis. So taking that along with organizational, you're really mapping how your employees are sharing knowledge, where they find themselves successful, and this really helps to retain this valuable knowledge and optimizing the corporate innovation process. So when you're optimizing these collaborative networks, you're able to map these workflows and see how teams are collaborating, departments are sharing information, and this helps improve effectiveness and the decision-making process.
Bennett, are you basically saying that we need data in order to convince companies, leaders, employees to engage deeper and more authentically in social media? Is that what this is? Is that what this is? Because I'm looking at a map. I'm looking at numbers and metrics. Why?
Right. I mean, leveraging data has definitely been more and more practical because it adds another concrete fact to your bottom line. A lot of companies are questioning the investment in social media and employing these online community managers. Now, here is another reason why that they are vital for the business, because they're able to leverage it in such a way.
This is fantastic. And you know what I love is the color scheme.
Yeah,
pretty, very nice.
And hey, Bennett, so this is all right. Okay, third time's the charm. So I know you're going to move on to a couple of more slides, but we have actually a question on the Twitter chat channel. Is actually Mike Kennedy at MEKNZL, I think. So he's asking, okay, this is great. Hi, Mike, if you're listening. So Mike is asking on the Twitter channel, great graphs, look awesome. How do we transform these graphs into actionable activities in terms of performance and talent management?
Yes, we love Mike. Thank you, Mike. Tweet, tweet.
So we're mapping the collaboration between individuals, divisions, in order to improve innovation within the organization. Companies are really positioning themselves to better connect their employees by adding these social ties and the collaboration groups. And the use is really, creating transparency. And you're able to actually visualize your company's social graph, and that's how you can really see the process. Because a lot of these things are intangible, and you can't see them within a company. And this provides you the access to that.
But I think the question was, in terms of performance management and talent management, does that mean that a person has more influence, and those are the nodes of people who are actually affecting the company in a positive way? Are those the people that need to try to retain more than everybody else because they have more influence?
Sure. I mean, this isn't really a popularity contest, and that's what I always get afraid of when I do these network maps for Twitter conversations, because they want to see who can have the most retweets, the most things coming in. And from an organizational side, it's not the person that has the most people reporting to them, or if they're reporting to the most people. You really have to look at a lot of different metrics for this. But yes, this type of organizational network analysis allows you to find people for possible promotion, but it also allows for you to visualize the process, the business processes that are going on within your divisions. But definitely, if depending on the survey questions that you're asking your employees, if it's who do you trust, who do you go to, who do you think's a leader, then from that map you can certainly find people that are worthy of promotion.
Cool. All right, let's move right along, because you have some other really cool, interesting images here. Tell me about this one.
Kevin W. Grossman is talking about Atari graphics, which, I'm sort of seeing that now. It does remind me of an Atari graphic. Thank you, Kevin, if you're listening.
So this graph is from InMaps, which is a product of LinkedIn. And this is really a fascinating tool that you can use, and it really allows you to visualize the LinkedIn networks. This is called egocentric map, because the individual, in this case myself, is in the middle, and then the relationships are mapped throughout. And each color code is a different type of cluster or group of individuals. So you have people from college, people from work, people from other social organizations. And if you're doing this with individual employees, you're able to see the access that you have as a company to second-degree networks. This is an unbelievable tool that LinkedIn has not promoted as heavily as I would like them to, but it is an incredible tool. And you're seeing these tools sprout up everywhere, and it's really fascinating to create these visualizations.
Hey Bennett, this is Crystal. So Angela Dunn actually sent over a question. I want to get your feedback on it. So she wrote, I think you can use this data to evaluate managers by seeing their networks and hierarchical, seeing if their networks are hierarchical or democratic. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
interesting. Like
certainly.
that.
I mean, as later in the presentation shows, a lot of the companies are presenting themselves in a hierarchy, but that's not really how companies are operating. It may seem like that from a title and position standpoint, but with the interaction, the network is very varied compared to what we see.
And we're assuming that we're going to make the leap from this conversation to what your talent pool may be, or your, God forbid I bring up a talent community, everybody, by the way. But, I mean, I'm assuming that that's why we're bringing up some of these stats is, when we talk about recruiting, right, and you're talking right now to somebody who's been a practitioner for many years as a recruiter in the trenches, right? We're always looking at your network. And now we're taking it 3 dimensions further, saying, well, you not only have a network, but we're analyzing your behavior as a hiring leader, as an employer brand, and we're really going to sift this out into different categories. So I think that's the fascinating part from my perspective.
Oh, yeah, and let me jump right in, because I was thinking the same thing, and I was thinking about talent communities and talent pools, as Bennett is talking about, people's second-degree connections and who they're related to, isn't this the nirvana? Again, we're going back to nirvana of social recruiting. Social recruiting, and this is why the existing social, and I'm going to go here with my opinion, but social recruiting tools today have not been as successful as they could be, because all they do is it's just about broadcasting opportunities. It's not about actually untangling the social graph and saying, you know what, you have Mary and Joe in your network, and they are the best people to take on that job that you have open in your company. And by the way, you have a connection with them, and you love working with them. Isn't this the nirvana of social recruiting then?
Yeah, it's great. It's taking HR and all these hiring processes to another level because of the technology that our society has created and developed.
Well, again, everyone bring out the violins. It's all about behavior. And, I'm going to say that today. I'm going to say that next week. I think that we still are a long way from employees, leaders, everybody in the organization really adopting and using social media in a way that makes sense, is engaging and empowering everybody, and on message. And I think, Bennett, you're on to something in terms of graphs and data, because when I go to a company, and it could be a company as large as, say, a Google, to a 70-person startup developing some interesting software here in Boston, we're talking about the same thing. It's about user adoption, right?
Right.
And social media. And I think a lot of companies and leaders still need to see graphs, still need to see data, and still need to see that dreaded 3-letter ROI in terms of, how does this impact my business?
Right, and there are so many articles about how companies are trying to put a number on the investment that they're placing on social media. And unfortunately, it has been quite difficult because you weren't able to measure engagement until recently. You weren't able to capture this data to map it out to show that this investment of time and energy from the company is actually benefiting us.
So moving right along, Bennett, what else do you have going on here? I have another graph that.
So this really just shows that, at least for my LinkedIn network, there are a lot of connections between the groups that I created and the different clicks of networks. And in maps from LinkedIn allows you to zoom in on different portions and click on each individual node to see the LinkedIn profile and who they're connected to within your network. It's an amazing tool, and I highly recommend people leveraging this.
So shameless plug here. So why do you think companies are not taking advantage of this internally within their own organization? Who's working with whom? Who's influencing whom? I mean, you're looking at LinkedIn here. Obviously, we all have our connections with LinkedIn. But once you get a job, you kind of drive to that. It's almost like social media in the enterprise or social networking, professional networking in the enterprise. It's almost like quiet. It's like echo. Like there's nothing going on other than there might be like a Yammer or something else like that is enabling collaboration. But it's almost like networking stops, right? It becomes performance reviews. It becomes meetings with your manager. And most companies think that they have a mentoring program. But so how can companies actually enable this within the enterprise so that they can see what talent they have and how they influence each other, how they work together, what are the drives that are within the company, who's getting stuff done, that kind of stuff.
Right. I mean, it's soliciting surveys to your employees and collecting this data to make these maps. A lot of people think that networking is just the concept of, what can I do for you, what can you do for me, and how do we advance in our careers. But networks within the company is this exchange, within your employee base. And a lot of people don't realize that because we think of the term networking in a different way and think of networks in a different way. So companies need to continually create these internal audits within their connections.
How does everybody, I have a question, as a recruiting practitioner who's still in the trenches, how do you think most recruiting and talent programs come together? Is it through a trusted network, or is it through a job ad? I mean, that's really what we're getting to, you know. And again, social media is about trust and behavior, and so is social recruiting. You know, who is your trusted? It's not just a network; it's who's your trusted network.
Right.
You know, something
right.
just sort of something to think about.
There's definitely the core network of trust, and then there's also the network of loose ties, creating access to different communities. So there's a lot of different ways to look at these networks. Well, within these social capital networks, you're having access to many different types of capital, whether it's human or organizational or financial, and a lot of businesses are using this opportunity to create a very different culture. And me being from the East Coast, I always envy the West Coasters by having this, because they really focus on the cultural aspects within their company, and that's where this really comes into play. Employees having access to other employees for help, for assistance, to foster other opportunities outside of the workplace.
Bennett, are you saying that you're seeing a trend from east to west in terms of this?
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the California startups in Silicon Valley are focusing on culture.
Right.
Because they see that drives, and I think they called it the GHP, the gross happiness product. Right?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. We love that. Can somebody tweet that, please? That is awesome.
So, and that really fosters, the strength of a company.
Right.
And, culture is becoming a huge aspect on, and, the access to social capital, rather than just being, like I've been, tell people, being stuck in a cubicle for 50 years, paying your gold watch and leaving, is a big sense of community, and that's where this comes.
And you're seeing that more in Silicon Valley than you are, say, in New York City or Boston or some of our New England cities? Do you think?
Certainly, a lot of startups.
On a macro level, at least? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of startups are have culture as a very important part of their business plan, because that helps.
I'm so happy to hear that. You guys have no idea. And then I say to myself, and I'm living by Harvard Square, Cambridge. Why? Right? Because workplace culture, and I've always said this, is the #1 reason why employees stay in their companies. It's not the job. It's not the role description. It's not only salary. It's how connected do I feel to my leader, my colleagues, and everybody in that organization, and how well is it defined? And when I go home after a long day of work, what do I talk about? What is the feeling that I get from being in that office? And that's workplace culture.
Right.
That's certainly one. That's one definition of workplace culture. It's more of a complex term, but that's really important to not only recruiting talent, but engaging and retaining talent.
Exactly.
Is how employees feel about where they work every day.
I completely agree, because when somebody leaves a company, they're not leaving necessarily the company, they're leaving its people.
Right.
So you may leave a company, you can still be loyal to the product, but you're leaving because of the individual there. So if you're fostering community, you're going to have less of that.
We have a question over here.
So Bennett, and maybe Megan and Rob as well. So Mike Kennedy asks, what happens when teams change? Because we all know this happens all the time. Do network connections adjust? How do we reuse this data?
Certainly. I mean, a lot of teams change, a lot of different leadership posts change, new directors come in, and positions change within teams. And yeah, you have to remap the system, because otherwise you're using an old answer key.
It's a living organism, really. I mean,
right.
Certainly.
Well, and it can change. Let's keep in mind, when we say change, I think there's this organizational behavior that happens in your brain, if we want to get really scientific and nerdy, which I like to do, that says, uh-oh, that's negative. But let's keep in mind, when employees see change and it's for the positive, that makes them want to go home and blog about it and tell their friends and family and colleagues about how great it is to work at an organization as well. And that, in turn, leads to what? It leads to additional recruits coming into your company, not because they're responding to a job ad or a description, but because somebody blogged about something yesterday about working at, XYZ company, and it made them think twice about what maybe they're missing in their current company. And so let's not underestimate the power of, employees blogging about what they're experiencing within the workplace culture to attract talent.
Right. So a good experience in the culture of a company translates into an ambassador on if that person's social becomes an ambassador on the social sphere, not only internally in the company but outside. So that's not really a bad thing that there's change in the social graph for the company, right?
Right. You're creating online and offline advocates for your company, which is only going to be beneficial.
All right, we're coming up on a little bit more than half an hour. We're going to try to wrap it up in the next 5 minutes. So let's just let's talk about the next slide. So what's in conclusion was network analysis? What does it give us, and what do we get out of it?
So with the social side of the network analysis, these patterns of conversation and interactions help companies on a ton of different levels. Whether you're focusing on trying to locate people who are interested in your product, you can find people for employment. You can sort of sift out people who are have complaints, and that's very beneficial to increasing your product, increasing your brand, and this type of analysis is certainly needed and really innovating human resource department as well as entire companies.
So is it a must-have for talent acquisition and talent management, or is it a nice-to-have?
I mean, it really depends on what your goal is. But, I think network analysis, both internal and external, is a must-have for companies to leverage the data that we have access to.
So your answer is it's a must-have because I think, and forgive me if I'm making a leap here, but are we still at a place, Bennett, where we need data? We're still making a case for social networks within the workplace? Is that sort of the general feeling you're getting from case studies and companies you're talking with?
Are you asking, are people still questioning the process?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with these software programs, there's somebody behind it. Somebody's obviously making these algorithms and deciding what to count, what not to count, what's more important than something else. So, they're questioning how these programs are being made and then how this process is being analyzed because somebody's deciding what to analyze. And so that's why you need the pairing of organizational network analysis from surveys from people and then leveraging the data from online conversation.
Interesting.
So it's really not one or the other, it's both.
Right. And so is that nirvana? Come on, be honest with us. You can say it.
Somewhat, yeah.
Is my cold or flu gone yet, everybody? Gosh, I need like some Tylenol right about now. Hopefully next show I won't have this cold.
I might be a little bit overcritical of the topic that we're talking about. You know that I'm a fan, but at the same time, it's really hard for most people to relate to how we're going to use this. Though I think we've done a good job during this conversation to talk about what it means, what it impacts, how it can be used for talent acquisition, talent management, and talent communities, and really seeing the influence. It's almost like the companies have org charts of how their company is organized, but in reality, now with social media and social networking in the enterprise and outside of the enterprise, that's different, right? The way people relate is completely different now. It's taken to the next level. So I'm not sure that people. I think we all agree that this is fascinating and this is interesting. I'm not sure if most people will actually see the relationship between the analysis and what actions I can take. I think in some cases that might be very obvious. In some cases they're like, okay, whoa, now what? It's more of a realization that, social media is impacting the way we work. But what do I do with this? I think performance management, these are the people I need to promote. Are these the people that I'm at risk of losing? or at risk of if I lose them, I need to keep happy because if I lose them, then there's going to be an impact to the company, that kind of stuff. Like that's the really interesting stuff that comes out of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Agreed.
So when companies are looking at the quality versus quantity side of things, it's finding that balance in the middle between the network activity and really what you should be focusing on. So the focus for companies needs to be to add more links between employees and not just to add more employees to current networks.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. So that's an outcome of analysis, right? Like where you have areas of in the company where people are not talking to each other or they feel too remote to the rest of the company, then instead of saying, well, let me focus on the ones that have the relationships, it's actually focus on the ones that don't have those connections and try to create more mix. Aha! I knew there was something in here towards the end that it was a good nugget. This is fascinating because this is really actionable, right, for companies. Now I'm realizing that, my technology department is completely separated from everybody else. They're not talking to people anywhere else in the company. That's why we're leaving. That's why they're leaving, because they have no exposure to the rest of the organization. That is great.
Right, a lot of these divisions are kept separate, not just in terms of where they're placed within the company, but through interactions. So it's creating the exchange with marketing and sales, with sales and the executive suites, with executive suites and interns. It's adding that variety, that diversity, and quality of connections. So as I was saying before, this is a hierarchy map that we see on company websites. You have the CEO, you have the vice presidents, you have the managers, and there are these links between them, but that's not really the process of how these companies are interacting. So by doing the network analysis for companies, you're seeing differences in trust and conversation and in leadership roles, and that's what you have to adapt to, because that's the framework. It's not the one that you tell people, it's what it actually is.
Awesome. What is this, by the way? That totally makes sense. There's an organizational view of the company, and there's the real view of the company, which is how people interact and work together. What is this? What do you have here?
So this is just for our viewers to look at and see. Okay, you have these 4 executives, and you have other people working, and you have a receptionist or an intern or an executive assistant. Where would you want these connections? Where do you see the value in creating links? And so this is sort of a blank slate for people to look at, and just think about ways that you can make the most benefits.
So Megan, what do you think? This is what makes the case for social in the enterprise, right? In professional networking in the enterprise, we're limited by our physical world, and we're also limited by the teams that we're integrated, that we're working with, by the organizational, like the typical org chart. And I think what we're saying is, companies that would continue to be limited that way will not be competitive. The companies that actually take advantage of social and bring that into the enterprise and utilize that for talent management, for getting work done, et cetera, those are the ones that are really going to take the lead in their industries. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say. I think what we're talking about here is the fact that, again, I'll probably go back to a very simple statement. Social media is no longer a fad. Letting consumers, letting the public have some transparency into your company culture, into what it's like to really work there, and we're not finding that out on a job ad or word of mouth, quote unquote. We're finding it out because your leaders, your CEOs, your employers are talking about it, and they're talking publicly. And over time, this is going to build trust. So finding talent through these trusted networks is actually going to decrease turnover over the long term and help with employee engagement. But again, you have to drink some of that social media Kool-Aid first to get to B and C and D and E, because if we're all here talking on Twitter and nobody's listening or nobody's building engagement through their behaviors, then we have more work to do. But I do, in general, I agree with that statement. But I think we have, I think we have more work to do.
Awesome.
We have more education, and we have more graphs to build, and some of them even look like Atari, and some of these really colorful graphs are kind of exciting. So let's hope that that actually takes hold, and companies start really looking at the metrics and the fact that social media is not a fad; it's not going away.
Right. And with that, Bennett, can you wrap it up for us? This is the last slide.
Yeah,
tell us a little bit
sure.
about
This is typically what I.
What do we think?
Yeah, this is typically what I end with a lot of my college presentations and with companies that I work with, because at this point, after we do all this work, I think that we are above the maze at this point. Individuals and business assets are no longer hidden, and we're given more pieces of this puzzle, which allows us to develop, to innovate, and really to outperform ourselves.
Excellent.
Right on. Cool. Well, thank you, Bennett, so much for being with us today. This is the end of our second episode of the Social Talent Show. Megan, always a pleasure working with you and having these conversations. Any other questions before we wrap it up and move on?
We do. We have a couple more questions. Let's just get through these. So, Bennett, what are the next steps for companies to take advantage of some of these opportunities?
I think that they have to create these surveys and really use the technology and the consulting expertise to find out the map of their company, and then really pivot their business to being able to operate within that map.
And who should be in charge of all these efforts?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, there's definitely a couple of ways to look at it. I think everybody should be in charge of monitoring these processes, but it's really innovating HR department. It's creating another portion to the social media and community manager. It's really involving everybody within the company in order to create this collaborative network.
I like it. This is very exciting stuff.
All right, HR people out there, you are the innovators. Make it happen.
Make it happen and show them through your behaviors. This has been a wonderful, wonderful afternoon with everybody, and I'm off to take some more vitamins and Tylenol and water. But it's been great being here with everybody, and thanks so much.
Great. So thank you. We're just about out of time today, but before we go, please don't forget to visit socialtalentshow.com to see the latest schedule for upcoming thought leadership shows, as well as register to access some of the previous shows. Next week we have Libby Sartain, who's the HR executive and business advisor. She was VP and head of people at Southwest Airlines and also at Yahoo, and she's going to be talking about aligning your brand with your employer brand. That is in 2 weeks, 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, next Wednesday. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Social T Show and of course, hashtag TChat for more disruptive social talent information. If you have any specific questions for us, please email info@upmo.com. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you, Rob and Megan, and especially Bennett for this, and we look forward to chatting again.
Thanks, everyone.
You're very
Peace out.
welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Take care.